Hi everybody, this is Steve Martin from SciMountain.com. I'm putting together a special video for you today. It's for all those people that could not attend the recent talk I did at the Samsung Arena in Milan, Italy. I was very privileged to be invited as a guest speaker at the DAN conference held on the 11th of November 2017. The arena itself was simply amazing. The event lasted for 3 hours and there was talks from 7 guest speakers who shared innovative ways to help improve diver safety. All the talks were aimed at the Italian market. The event sold out with 120 people attending. I was the only speaker to present in English, and since so many of you requested for me to video my talk, I thought I could go one step better and actually create a video covering my entire presentation so that all the divers around the world could benefit from it. I was asked to prepare a 30-minute presentation based around the art of teaching, which is something I'm extremely passionate about, and I'm confident that this presentation will have a huge impact on improving diver safety and show a lot of students and instructors where they're going wrong and how they can definitely turn things around. All the slides you're seeing now are the exact ones I used during the presentation. I always start by getting to know the audience I'm speaking to. I would say that out of the 120 people that were there, around 70% were a mixture of recreational and technical divers, with the other 30% being dive instructors and just a few certified cave divers or instructor trainers. Next, I explain a little bit about my background and what I'm best known for, which is a specialist in side mount training in both the open water and cave environment. My passion for teaching actually started through water skiing, which I've been doing since I was 10 years old. At 18, I dropped out of college with the goal to further my passion for water skiing. I was told that I could water ski every day. The only catch is I'd have to teach people to ski. I was selfish at first. I just wanted to ski every day, but I actually found out very quickly that I had this gift and passion for teaching that would later give me more enjoyment than actually doing the sport. From an early age, I've always had a dream of traveling the world. And of course, like many people, I need to work as I travel. But I wasn't sure that water ski instruction was the right path. It's lucky for me that I have great parents that allowed me to learn scuba diving when I was just 16 years old. And scuba diving definitely has to be one of the best jobs to have with the goal and dream of traveling the world. So in 2004, I became a dive instructor. 3 years on from there, I was one of the youngest course directors in the world. Being an instructor trainer is a very rewarding job, but it really opened my eyes to the different instructors and abilities they have, and how vastly different we can teach the same thing, both in a good way and a bad way. Right now, at the time I'm making this presentation, I have 8 years experience in side mount and cave diving instruction. Aside from scuba diving and instruction, I try and keep as fit and healthy as possible through CrossFit, hiking, and healthy eating. Well, that's enough about me. Let's talk about the common problems we face in scuba diving. We'll start with choosing a dive instructor. Some common assumptions are that all instructors must be good. Well, sadly, from my experience around the world, I can tell you this is just not accurate. We find many instructors that just don't put your dive skills and safety as their main priority when you come for learning. I'll be proving this shortly in this presentation, showing solutions to problems that simply should not exist. When it comes to choosing the right instructor, a lot of people consider a recreational or technical instructor, and we're told to do our research. Well, what I suggest is you research what their students have to say about them. And don't just base everything off a qualification somebody may have. You'll find the best instructors don't have every qualification, they just specialize in areas they're passionate about. For example, look at the top picture on the right. You've got 3 divers. 2 on the right hand side have video cameras. 1 diver sees it acceptable as sitting on the bottom whilst taking a picture, the other completely neutrally buoyant. And 100% you don't want to be the diver on the bottom. A lot of diver training and instructors, they focus on teaching you how to deal with problems. For example, if your buoyancy's not so good, make contact with the ground, do this fin pivot exercise and establish neutral buoyancy. I would much rather see people teach correct weighting and buoyancy control right from the start. So somebody never has to touch the floor and we focus on avoiding problems than creating them and dealing with them. Now I'm going to give you all the tips, tricks and suggestions that have enabled me to become a very successful dive instructor. Firstly, any course you join should have a maximum ratio of 3 divers to 1 instructor. This is not just to maximize safety, it's to allow the students real value for the time they're with the instructor. Simply put, even somebody with my level of experience, I can't teach more than 3 people and offer real value into the courses I teach. So, how is a new instructor expected to do this? I actually find courses with 2 students on them, like you see in the picture, the perfect amount. You can have both students work in a team, or even each of the students practicing something slightly different, depending on what they need. If you're charging the right amount of money per person, then it will be cost effective for your time and theirs. Another thing that is extremely important is that you offer ideal conditions for the training. This means there is no to little current, you have clear visibility so you can actually evaluate everything the diver is doing. If you can't see the whole diver, the line, the rocks around them, how can you possibly evaluate their finning techniques, their movement? And if they clearly can't see you, a lot of time is wasted and you really shouldn't be training somebody in those conditions. Once somebody is trained and you're just going for pleasure dives, then low visibility, strong current, they can be kind of fun to dive in when the diver's ready, not when they're actually in training. I hear all the time, yeah, but the low visibility conditions are all we have around here. Well, my advice, find a different location, travel to another country nearby if needs be. A good instructor and dive centre should provide all student equipment needed for the particular course you're taking. If someone is doing a side mount course with me, I provide the cylinders, hardware, side mount system and regulator system. All they need is personal items like an exposure suit, fins, mask, dive computer. The rest I provide, and that way once the student finishes the training course, they'll know what works for them, and any money they spend on equipment afterwards will be the right decision because they've already used that during their training and they know it will work for what they want to do in the future. If an instructor or dive center says you must buy equipment before training and does not provide you with equipment, my advice, find somebody else to train with. Now I want to talk about the most successful course I run, and it's actually Essentials Training, which is conducted over 2 or 4 days. It involves buoyancy, trim, finning techniques, and developing underwater awareness. After your initial courses, open water, advanced, you really want to find someone who can offer you real essentials training. The first thing I fix with every single diver I've ever taught is showing them how to correctly weight themselves. This is something that is just not covered correctly, and I'm going to show you now an extract from my online video training series which covers exactly how you can weight yourself correctly in as little as 30 seconds. In this workshop, we're going to take a look at correct weighting. It's definitely one of those skills people have the most problems with. A lot of divers and instructors just advise you to keep adding weight until you go down. But all you're doing there is just overweighting divers, which is completely wrong and unnecessary. The most accurate way to get your weight right is to do an end of dive weight check. The problem is you need to add some weight so you can actually get into the water in the first place, and it doesn't make sense or safe for that amount of weight to be too heavy or too light, causing you problems while you're underwater. So I'm about to go through a surface weight checking procedure that will generally get you within plus or minus 1 kilo from the final weight you'll need, so it's actually very accurate. Let's start with the type of cylinders you'll use, steel or aluminium. My surface weight test procedure stays the same, but you do need to know if your cylinder becomes buoyant at the end of a dive like most aluminium cylinders do, or using a steel cylinder which is still negatively buoyant near empty. The air inside the cylinder that we breathe actually has the same weight in aluminium and steel. A useful tip is to have some small adjustment weights nearby that you can just hang on to while you're doing your weight checks. This way you can find the right amount of weight you need, and then you just add those weights into your BCD system at the correct place to help with your trim underwater. It's important you have good conditions when you do this, no waves, surge or swell, and access to shallow water as well as water too deep to stand. So the first step is to get into the water wearing your equipment. I actually just have the back plate with no additional weight. In a vertical position, you fully deflate your BCD, hold an 80% lung volume, and you're looking to float at eye level. That's the results you want to achieve. If you start to sink, you're too heavy, remove some weight. Next, you want to hold a 50% lung volume, shown by 2 fingers, and you should still be floating with the top of your head level with the water. When you then hold a 20% lung volume, shown by 1 finger, you will slowly start to descend from the surface. At any time you hold 80%, you'll find yourself back on the surface buoyant again. Those are the results you want to achieve to be correctly weighted. What I'm going to show you now is what happens when you're wearing too much weight. I'm going to start by just adding an extra 1 additional kilo. You can see from watching that video there was a clear demonstration of lung volume holds. 3 fingers being shown is 80%. 2 fingers, diver was holding 50% lung volume, and 1 finger demonstrating around 20 to 30% lung volume. The easy way to think about this is when you take a normal breath in fully, this would actually be 80%, as you could still keep packing air on top. When you fully exhale, you could still keep pushing air out. So one normal full exhale is 20%, and halfway between that is around 50%. A diver being correctly weighted is absolutely crucial, and a bit later in this presentation I'll show you exactly how that impacts the diver's safety and why we must have every diver correctly weighted. The next thing I recommend when you conduct a 2-day workshop on essential skills is that the diver practices and learns all finning techniques. The emphasis is put on everything being done completely neutrally buoyant and of course correctly weighted. The use of control lines is absolutely crucial. The top picture you can see shows a horizontal control line. It has 2 fixed reference points, which I'm using a cave cookie fixed onto the line. Each cookie gives the diver a fixed visual reference point. You must have adequate depth below and above the line so the diver can really work their buoyancy skills and stay neutral, level with the line marker. On this example, they've deployed their long hose, it's clipped to the line, and the diver's goal is to maintain their buoyancy and stow the hose effectively. I use horizontal control lines for developing all finning techniques. I have the diver swim one side of the line, the other diver on the other side, and when they reach the end of the line, they simply do a helicopter turn and keep going around. This allows me to really get in and video record what I need and suggest improvements for each of the divers, live underwater without them swimming off in the distance, making it harder to evaluate them. In the second picture, where you can see 3 divers, there is a vertical control line. This is used for buoyancy control and ascent and descent training. One great way to develop lung control awareness is to have a diver set their buoyancy at a fixed depth. For example, like in the picture, the diver is at 8 meters and they're putting just enough air in the BCD. When they hold a 50% lung volume, they neither ascend or descend, they're completely neutral. Then another line marker is set at 1 meter increments, going above and below the diver's start position. This test started at 8 meters, but 7 meters we had another line marker, 6 meters, 5 meters, 4 meters, and the idea is the diver uses just their lung volume to rise and they don't add air into or out of their BCD. As they rise, they'll have to use lesser lung volume to stay at each marker. As they descend, they'll have to hold a higher lung volume. This exercise is fantastic for creating lung and buoyancy control awareness. This kind of essentials training will make a real difference to every diver. What I'm most well known for is my Side Mount Essentials 4-day program. The first 2 days are spent working and developing essential dive skills, like we just discussed. The additional 2 days, I suggest divers work on dive planning, navigation, working out how much air you use underwater, your SAC rates. You develop teamwork, doing technical level ascents and descents. This is following a strict run time and using hand communications to signal when you're leaving the bottom, what your next ascent level is, how long you'll spend there, and so on. I've found that it doesn't matter how experienced a diver is and what qualifications they have. If they've just got 10 dives, 50 dives, or even several hundred dives, they still need this essentials training, and it really is the starting platform that every diver needs to achieve, and then taking them to the next level Whatever that might be, whatever the diver's interest, it becomes an easy process both for the diver and instructor. And of course, learning something new like cave diving becomes safe and enjoyable for everyone. Having the right essentials training will make the difference between whether you can learn something more advanced or not. Now with some examples, we're going to show exactly how a diver's safety is impacted based on everything we've discussed so far. Imagine yourself on a crowded dive boat. There's a little bit of a rush to get into the water. You've not done your equipment checks properly. Your BCD is empty and you've forgot to turn your air on. You, like about 90% of divers I see around the world, are probably heavily overweighted. You now get to the back of the boat. Your regulator probably was pressurized, so you put it in. You have a couple of breaths. You make that giant stride into the water. You quickly find out you've nothing to breathe. But because your BCD is empty, you're grossly overweighted. You're now descending. You kick hard, trying to get back to the surface. And most divers probably do. Then somebody helps them. But we have already lost lives to people that could not get back to the surface. And this is just something that should never have happened. If that diver was correctly weighted, it's impossible for that diver to descend if their legs are moving or they don't fully exhale. And that's a diver that is correctly weighted with full cylinders. If you're thinking drop the weight belt, I can tell you right now that is the wrong thing to be thinking. Correctly weighted divers do not need ditchable or removable weights. It takes me as little as 30 seconds to do a surface weight check, as I show in my online training videos. So there is no reason any diver should be diving overweighted. Don't become another statistic. Make a change now. Next, I want you to think about if you actually had a BCD failure at depth, could you make a safe, controlled swimming ascent back to the surface? So you start a dive with a single cylinder, let's say 200 bar or 300 psi at the surface. You then make the descent, could take you 3-4 minutes. You go down to 30 meters or 100 feet. And at that point, you will have used some gas, so your cylinder will be a little more buoyant due to the air lost. But again, as I mentioned, 90% of people are not diving correctly weighted and in fact diving overweighted. So you simulate a BCD failure by removing all the air from your BCD, and you're simply going to hold a higher lung volume, like 80%, and you're going to see if you can kick slowly and still maintain your position. I bet most of you are thinking, no, that's crazy. There is no way I could hold position. I would definitely be sinking. And if you find yourself kicking extremely hard to maintain your buoyancy, you are still clearly overweighted. And this is not a safe way to be diving. You can sign up right now for my free online training series at sidemounting.com, and you can actually watch a complete online training video which shows me demonstrating this exact problem as a correctly weighted diver, and you'll see that I can safely ascend without ditching any of my weights. And if you think you're good enough to know how much weight to ditch in an emergency like this, you're wrong. I don't know any divers that would know exactly how much weight to ditch at any given time. Better to be correctly weighted in the first place. Let's now look at another problem which simply again should never happen to a diver that is well trained, and that's running out of air. As technical divers, we learn to plan our gas and understand how much we're breathing. So as long as when we dive, we're not over breathing and our equipment doesn't have a catastrophic failure, then in actual fact, we wouldn't even need to check our pressure gauges to know we have enough air remaining should we be diving our plan. However, of course, I'm not encouraging you to not look at your pressure gauge. You should put it in a place that it's easily visible, and a thinking diver should be checking it. I strongly suggest all divers take some basic free diving training, as one of the best things I learned that helped me with scuba diving was some of the breathing techniques and control free divers learn, and I found out that if I'd just taken a normal breath, I would have at least a minute to deal with a problem and get to another air source. If I just exhaled, I would still have around 30 seconds or more to secure an air source, should in the unlikely event I be out of air. And that's a long time to get to a buddy or deal with a problem. Now let's look at some problems more experienced divers are faced with. And one of the most common ones talked about is divers needing or being forced to make negative entries. You find this common in resort style places where they have currents, like in the Maldives, in Egypt, and the boat crew are putting total unnecessary pressure on every diver to overweight themselves. They tell divers that when they say go, you must roll over the side of the boat, quickly get down underwater before you drift off on the surface. This causes a lot of divers to be disorientated. They deliberately wear too much weight. They're rushing, so they forget to put the mask on properly or regulator in. It creates huge problems and stress with divers becoming separated, disorientated, and for sure this is not safe. I myself have had problems with this early on as a new diver, but I can remember fairly recently being on exactly one of these boats with the boat crew stressing everybody must get underwater quickly. I got in first. I stayed at the surface and waited for several more divers to get into the water. Sure, I drifted a little bit, but I made a controlled descent. Whilst being correctly weighted, I leveled myself out at just a meter below the surface. I started to swim towards the other divers and the point where we're all supposed to meet underwater, and all I could see was divers around me experiencing problems with disorientation, separating from their buddy, dropping too quickly, and all the extra stress that comes with this. Going to depth where narcosis might be an issue is just a bad combination, and again, them being overweighted, it's just a matter of time before a real problem occurs. Something else I want to talk about is divers going inside a cave or a cavern and they're not trained to do this. I see all the time dive guides taking huge risks with people. First of all, the dive guide usually is not even trained themselves in cave or cavern diving. They think because they have lots of dive experience that it's okay to take people in those environments. I'm sorry, but if you're an instructor or instructor trainer and you're trying to compare yourself to a student who's been through an 8-day cave program and certified as a cave diver, you're not even close to the level of skill and knowledge they will have developed. And divers that go into these overhead environments are at very high risk without the correct training. There's a good reason why it takes 8 days of intensive training to train a cave diver to be safe in those environments. I have a 45-minute video on my YouTube channel, Sidemount Scuba Diving, entitled 8 Days of Cave Diver Training, the movie. Make sure you check it out. My advice is be different from the rest. If you're an instructor, make sure you're trained yourself and you're offering essentials training to every diver you're working with. Both students and instructors, if you see divers that are diving overweighted, take the time to educate and advise them on one of our biggest problems, and that's again not being correctly weighted. Now onto one of my favourite topics, and arguably something that has helped me become very successful, and that's using video filming while underwater, allowing me to give feedback post-dive to all of my students. Nearly every student I train for the first time tells me they've never seen themselves before on video, and they're quite amazed at the difference to what they thought they were doing as to what they were actually doing when it comes to review themselves. I've found that creating this awareness in the student who's learning a particular skill really speeds up their learning curve. They take more interest in their training, and because I allow them to keep videos after their course, they have these amazing custom-made materials that help them refresh and keep their skills sharp long after the training. That combined with my online training videos, well, you can't go wrong. If you're an instructor and you're not using video feedback to train your divers, to be completely honest, you're doing them a disservice, and I would actually recommend that students do not take training with somebody who's not prepared to put that time and effort into their students. So every instructor that is using video feedback, they're going to have promotional and marketing materials by taking still pictures from live video. They can create a nice end of course photo album. They'll gain a library of videos showing common student problems they can show to new students to avoid them having the same problem. And I can honestly say my own teaching techniques have improved dramatically through filming and giving feedback to my students. Using a small GoPro camera, like you can see in both of the pictures, is non-intrusive. It does not take any more skills for me to use it. It does not hinder in any way my ability to teach somebody or rescue somebody. It can be clipped off very quickly or discarded if it's getting in the way. And if I'm recording my students, then 100% my focus is directly on them. Let's take this one step further and talk about dive agencies. Imagine they insisted on all instructors using video feedback. I mean, wow, think about that from a quality control point of view. You could actually ask for any student video showing that that student has actually got real mastery of a skill, and other instructors could have an opinion on that. If the real focus was on divers achieving a high skill level through quality training and less on creating numbers of instructors out there, for sure you'd be insisting on video feedback, monitoring it, and having a real quality control checking system. I mean, just think about it. It would be very easy to see if an instructor is teaching to the standard that the agency would really want. I've found that video feedback really brings the whole team together. It's a great focus to have at the end of every day. I mean, good training is not just about the 1 or 2 hours you're underwater. It's everything before the dive and after it, and ensuring that you give the most to every student you're training. So make sure you look for an instructor who's giving you video feedback during training. If you've not already checked out my online video-based training at sidemounting.com, make sure you head over to my website and check that out. There's a free course there you can test. And what I've proven with several hundred people using my online training is that they don't want to read text online. What I offer is real e-learning through video-based instruction. Unlike during a live course, you can actually re-watch sections as often as you like. you can study the materials way before the course starts, which means you're not losing any of your precious underwater training time, which we all know on our days off or our holiday, it's extremely limited. I'm very lucky that people from all over the world are using my training. There is lots of customer reviews on sidemounting.com if you want to check those out. I think we'll see a major shift in what the dive agencies are releasing when it comes to online materials, and you'll see that they adopt this video-based online training delivery method that I've come up with. Right now, you'll see I've released 7 different courses with 165 individual videos. There's 22 hours of content with a 7-minute average on each video. This is all in a state-of-the-art e-learning platform that can track your progress, and it covers training for all levels of divers, back mount, side mount, and technical diving configurations, as well as finning techniques and hand signal development. Just think, if you could watch your instructor live show you how to set your equipment up and learn dive skills like regulator switching, dealing with an out-of-air diver, rescue work, sending up an SMB, you'd be silly not to study all that before the course start, and then you'd have a great understanding of what needs to be done during practical training, and you're not wasting any of that precious in-water time by discussing all that theory and practical things you could have learnt on land prior to arriving and getting wet. Remember to head over to sidemounting.com and check out my free online training course and test my unique video-based training for yourself. I really hope everybody watching this presentation has benefited from it. You've picked up some really valuable tips and tricks, and it's educated you both as a student and an instructor on how you can improve. It's made you aware of the real problems and safety concerns we're faced with in scuba diving and how you go about addressing them. I'd love to hear your feedback on this video, so please post comments wherever you see it get released. Everything I have discussed in this video is explained thoroughly in my online training materials. So again, check out the different packages I have available on sidemounting.com. Thank you for your time, and I really look forward to any questions and feedback you have. Thank you.